Try to keep it under 710 minutes, okay?
I don't know, it could be really difficult.
Oh, Jesus. I went the wrong way.
Yeah, I don't know why.
So, welcome to our first, what do we call this? Frequently asked questions tutorial.
Fireside chat.
Fireside chat. We have coffee, we have fire, and we have answers to your burning questions. See how I timed it?
Yeah, that was good. That's good. That was nice.
It wasn't very good. All right. So, why am I doing all the talking, Gabby?
Because you started talking and then you just continued talking.
That's what I'm used to.
So we're going to talk about how to basically train a little bit and then also find your first contest and kind of what that entails and some suggestions and tips that we have for doing that.
We could seriously kill 710 minutes talking about how we're going to train for a show. So we're really going to focus on the whole, how do you find your first one? How do you know like it'll be a good one to kind of start off with? And the issues that come along with competing for the first time. So I guess first and foremost would be the assumption that you are currently training. If you're not a strength training person and you don't deadlift and squat and press on a regular basis, you should probably wait a minute before you try your first strongman show. That's not to say that there probably aren't people that train in athletics who are actually, incredibly physically strong, who could probably do very well in their first show. It would just be, the odds aren't very good.
Right.
Most people are probably coming to strongman from possibly an athletic background that has a big strength and conditioning emphasis, like football or track and field or something like that. But usually, especially when we're talking about amateurs who are adults, we're talking about people who like powerlifting, Olympic weightlifting, or even CrossFit, who are looking for something new to do. I'd imagine there's a huge swath of y'all that are watching this video right now that probably have some, if not all of your experience in one of those three fields. And now you're looking at picking up rocks and throwing kegs. So if you're not training at all, just start with that, and we'll maybe talk about finding a show later. Gabby, I think one of the questions that people ask a lot is, how do I know if I'm strong enough to actually do a strongman show? And I think there's a few different answers to that, but I will let you start.
So that is kind of a complicated question with complicated answers, kind of like you alluded to. So how you know if you are strong enough to compete? Well, it really depends on the show that you are going to compete in. Most people sort of aim to complete at least 80% of the events. There's certainly no problem with zeroing an event or two your first show, but again, it's not ideal. It's not a great confidence booster, speaking from experience. So kind of the first step is really finding a show that you want to compete in, looking at what those weights entail, and planning your training specifically around that show.
I totally agree with Gabby. I think if you start looking for shows that have novice divisions, and since we're talking about the Strongman page here, I think we're all kind of hopefully on the same page. We're talking about women's novice divisions, which not every single show is going to have. When you find a show like that, they're going to hopefully explicitly state what the weights are for most of the events. And so right away, if you have some weight room experience and you see like an 18-inch deadlift and it says like 300 pounds, you have an idea of what that means, and you can play around in the gym pretty easily and figure out whether or not you can do it. It gets a little more complex when you see things like logs and stones and kegs, and you may not actually have that in your current gym. And we will definitely discuss that at the later on in the video. I think another good metric is, and people want to ask these questions, is kind of like, how strong am I relative to, pound for pound, like, how do I perform in like a weight class, like in powerlifting or weightlifting? I think there's always been that urge to say, what is like a beginner level of strength, what is intermediate, what is advanced, and I found over time that doesn't really predict a lot of performance in strongman. There's definitely certain things that if you do well in the gym, that'll really transfer well to a strongman competition. But just saying like, oh, I can strict press X, I must be able to do this, in a contest, doesn't actually work out. And what I've also found with athletes is they always surprise you a little bit when they actually compete. Sometimes because at like a lesser level, they sort of undercompete, and often, much more often, they do better than you really expect when they go to compete. And so kind of worrying about where your gym numbers are at before you choose to do, like even just pursue like looking up where am I going to do my first show and things like that, is probably a mistake. If you can look at specific numbers like, oh, it has a 150-pound stone, I've done one of those before, that's way better than being like, how much should a girl my size front squat before she considers looking for a show? I found that to be a kind of a dead end. It doesn't really mean much.
Agreed, 100%.
All right, so how does one find a show? Gabby?
So there are several options.
You're young, you know the internet.
I know the internets and things. Kind of the best way is the internet, right? We do live in 2015. So the NAS website.
The North American Strongman website?
Yes. Or any other of the sort of strength athletic strongman federation websites will have upcoming contests listed and their locations, and usually the entry forms will be posted there as well.
If we can internet smart enough, we'll actually be putting links somewhere around here for those websites. So first things first, like the governing body will provide the official information about the shows. Cale Beck and his Starting Strongman website has started to aggregate as many competition listings as possible into one place. So it doesn't really matter what the governing body might be, they're going to put it on their site to let you know about it. So we'll throw up a link for that as well. Here in the States, the most well-established governing body for amateur strongman, and pretty much the only one in the last few years until recently, is North American Strongman. It's very affordable to join. It's like $50 or $60 a year or something like that. Most promoters do shows for about the same amount of money, maybe $50 to $80 to compete typically. So it's, as these type of sports go, it's pretty affordable to get started with. And you should know that up front. There's going to be an entry fee for the show, and you're going to need to be a member of whatever the governing body may be, which is most likely North American Strongman, maybe United States Strength Sports or Strength Coalition.
There's a couple of them, and it usually kind of varies by region. I know that speaking with other people who compete kind of in the Midwest, that USSC, is that what it is kind of the more prominent federation out there that has more contests than NAS, whereas we're in Virginia and NAS has contests sort of all up and down the coast that are more accessible to us, and the other federations are a little bit rare to come by. So you can kind of do a little bit of research and figure out which one is going to essentially give you the most bang for your competitive buck in that sense.
So the next question is, like, how do I judge the quality of a show that I do find as far as will it be appropriate for me? I guess the first question to ask is, one, do they have a women's division at all? Furthermore, does that incorporate a novice division? And further yet still, does said novice division actually have weight classes? Now, if you're a super heavyweight, that last part really may not matter to you. But if you're under 180 pounds, which a lot of beginners are, you probably want to try to find a show that has some sort of weight division. And in prior years, it was very hard to find, let's say 10 or 15 novice women to all sign up for one show. And so you didn't really get light, middle, and heavyweights. What you got was either everybody competed together, or maybe you'd have like a light-heavy split. And the promoter was really, it was up to his discretion how to split that. And you'd see a lot of different ways of doing it. But very often it would be, they would pick an arbitrary line, kind of in the middle, like 150 pounds or 160 pounds, and everyone under that would be in one group, and everyone over that would be in another group. More recently, there have been some promoters who I think geographically are in the right place. So there's been some shows for us in our region in Washington, D.C. that have had a lot of novice and open class women. We're really lucky here that we have a lot of strongman gyms regionally. There's 2 or 3 in the DC area, there's 2 or 3 in the Richmond area, There's 1 or 2 in Virginia Beach, Norfolk area. And so when there's a show in our kind of little triangle, there's usually a lot of girls that will come out to compete. And that's probably unique. So you kind of need to dig around. Most promoters are now promoting their shows on Facebook, and that's extremely helpful because a more more active social media using promoter will post things like their competitors list, and they might update them like daily. We've seen a lot of that recently, and it's a great way for the promoter to engage the athletes and to get people excited and to maybe peer pressure some other people into signing up. Whereas the old way was like you send in a paper form via snail mail, and you really didn't know who was going to be there or if your division was going to be full at all. And that kind of sucks. So a lot of new promoters are really using Facebook to promote their shows, so you can find out a lot of good information. They might post pictures of the implements or give you more information about the events or show you who signed up. So if they have a Facebook page, you can find out right away how many novice women have already signed up and what weight classes they may have signed up for, etc. Please add to that, Gabby. I feel like I'm talking too much.
So again, the indicator sort of a nice female-friendly show is the presence or absence of a novice division if you are a novice.
If they have Ladies Lift Here in their name or not.
Yeah, Ladies Lift Here puts on great shows. I'd highly encourage anybody to compete, and those are very well run and organized.
There's a few other groups like New England Women's Strength. They've put on a show or two, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't know about anything in the West Coast, but I've heard there are women there. It's hard to believe that there isn't something going on.
Right.
Maybe if there isn't, this can be the beginning of some positive peer pressure for that.
Right. So look for sort of other groups, maybe outside of your traditional strongman promoters, who are getting involved in promoting and putting together shows.
CrossFit.
Yeah. Reality is, if you are a woman who wants to compete in Strongman, you are probably most likely, like Jason said earlier, coming from CrossFit, and that is pretty fantastic.
I said Olympic weightlifting and powerlifting as well.
That too. It depends on your region. But lots of CrossFit gyms usually equals lots of toys, equals lots of possibility for shows. So that is kind of a nice place to start. Sort of above and beyond that, again, like Jason sort of said, finding a show that has actual weight classes that are somewhat full is very, very nice.
You're going to have so much more fun competing in your first show if you're competing with people who are about your size and they don't have an unfair advantage over you. So that's something that, and this goes for the guys too. Nobody's going to have a good time at a novice show if they're a smaller person and then they compete against just massively larger people. And it's much more likely to happen to girls because there'll be less girls showing up for your typical show. And we don't really need to name names or dish dirt, but some promoters are well known for having very female-friendly shows. And it's kind of a chicken or an egg story where once they get that reputation, more and more girls sign up, which means that more and more girls are in each individual division. They always have a full division, so they get to do the right weights, they have a better time, they tell their friends, more girls come next time. And it's just a real positive feedback loop that builds a really good buzz for that promoter, that show. And it works in reverse too. If there's something bad about the show and very few girls sign up and everybody shows up and they're all lumped together and nobody has a good time and blah blah blah, then word gets out about that too. The last thing that we could talk about is when you see a show, sometimes the more experience you have with the lifts, the more you can infer how much experience maybe the promoter has with working with women. And there are promoters out there who, they really gear their shows towards maybe more experienced athletes. They might gear their shows explicitly towards men or maybe even a certain weight class of men. Sometimes, it's a singular show. There's a Strongman Mania show coming up here in our, was it DC?
Yeah.
Maryland? I think it's in Maryland. Soon, and they actually have 3 shows in one day, and they have a women's show, they have a level 1 show, and then they have a Platinum Plus show, the winner of which will become or will get their pro card. And so that show is only for lightweight men at 231 and down. And that's a little weird, but you'll see things like that. But there's definitely promoters out there who they think that strongman is the sport for super heavyweight men. And because that's what people see on TV, so they want to appeal to that spectator, and so they want to have like a lot of big guys and have some big crazy stuff going on. And that is fun to watch, but it's not really encouraging to kind of grow the sport, like if the big guys are the star of the show and then everyone else is ignored. And unfortunately, there are definitely some promoters who kind of lose sight of how important the novices are, how important the women are, how important the lightweights are to the growth of the sport, and so that happens. You can kind of tell, Gabby and I have looked at a few shows recently, and it's like, they'll just have weird numbers where, you know, there's like a pressing event and it's like really heavy and really hard, and then there's a deadlift event and it's like way too light and way too easy, and you can tell that, you know, this person just doesn't know like what women are capable of, or what's a typical, you know, performance for women of this weight class or that weight class. And so it would just be a weird show where everybody would like zero one thing and then get like a million reps on another, and it would just be kind of a mess. And I've seen some of that recently, and it really depends on the region. I think we're really lucky here. Being right next to DC means that, frankly, there's 30 or 40 CrossFit affiliates in the greater sort of you know, DC, Northern Virginia, and Maryland sort of suburb like region. And that means, you know, if each one of those gyms has 100 people, you know, and 50 women, it's like 2,000 women who are doing strength training and they want to compete, you know. So if you promote the show, you know, you just send all these affiliates like a little poster or whatever. Next thing you know, you've got like 20 women showing up for like a novice division, and it's a great show for those girls. Especially, this is very, very true in our region as a lightweight. If you're, you know, 140 or you're like 200 or 175, especially as a novice, you're going to be competing mostly against CrossFitters. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. These are very fucking fit people. You know, they're good at Olympic weightlifting. They've got cardio out the ass, and they are athletes. They're going to be tough to beat. But the cool thing is at least your division's full, you know, at least you're not being bumped up a weight class. There's a lot of like weird sort of, you know, animosity between the different sort of like strength training groups, and I have to say this, and it's not because I'm a CrossFit affiliate owner, which I absolutely am. CrossFit has done so much for the sport to really help it grow. I probably dabbled in Strongman before I became an affiliate, so like I'm not speaking out of a sort of like an ignorant bias. Like, I didn't really get involved in Strongman when I had the opportunity like almost 10 years ago, because there was just no opportunities for lightweights. It was just not fun. Nobody was competing at 175. Like, they would never fill out a weight class. It was just really tough. And the attitude that they didn't have novice classes most of the time, and it was just a shitty attitude of like, get bigger, get stronger, fuck off. Like, and now there's an actual market. Promoters have learned that you can fill a show with these CrossFitters if you're nice to them and you talk to them right and you make it easy to do. So once you find one of these, what do you do next?
Then you need to train for it, right?
You gotta train for it. Don't be an asshole, you gotta get ready.
So you send in your entry form, you do all that fun stuff, and then you need to train for it.
Yeah.
I have competed against women who have never touched the implement and who come and just absolutely kick my ass all up and down. They are anomalies.
Yeah.
And really, if you can, I mean, getting time on the implements is really, really...
How much time, Gabby?
8 to 12 weeks time, Jason.
Yeah, we were talking about this before we started filming. I think if you don't have like at least 6 to 8 weeks to actually kind of work your way through the implements and start kind of training more seriously, you're not gonna be fully prepared. That doesn't mean that, you know, you can't do okay. The first time that I ever coached anyone through a show, they were just like the 2 strongest or 4 strongest people in my gym. I took all 4 of them over to where I got coached, and like they got one afternoon of training. 2 of the guys got fucking killed, but they were like 240 in the super heavyweight category, you know? So like they were like the smallest guys there, and they finished last, and they didn't care, they had a great time. And the 2 lightweights that I sent in there, like, you know, one of them basically tied for first on his first try, and it's like, you know, he was one of those guys. It's like, you know, he had done he had done stones and like the yoke and stuff like that like one Saturday afternoon, and that was it. But that was enough, and you know, he's just a super strong dude, so he did okay. And you might be that super strong dude too, and you might do okay, but it would be great if you had an actual opportunity to train for this stuff.
Even if it's just getting in on, you go drive somewhere on a Saturday and train with people who have implements and you know how to use them. It's great if you have a yoke. If you walk it like an idiot and are going to snap your spine in half, it's not so great. Right? So you have to actually kind of have some knowledge of what you're doing. There are lots of, internet resources. Some are better than others, and things like that. But best case scenario is finding a gym with the implements, finding somebody who knows what they're doing to help see you through that, and getting in as much time on the implements as you can and as you can recover from.
Yeah.
Walking a yoke is exhausting. You will basically sit down and nap for 5 hours after you're done. So that's not feasible to do every single training session, but it is feasible to do once a week maybe.
We'd also probably put a 12-week cap on show prep for the same reasons. Actually training hard, rigorously, and repeatedly on specific events, trying to get better at that, you'll get burned out after a while. And we try to schedule our training in such a way that we kind of have a season, and we'll do multiple shows within a window. And by the time you get to whatever ends up being the last one, you're fucking ready to quit. So if you're giving yourself 4 or 5, 6 months to get ready for a show, you might be overthinking a little bit, especially in the novice division. This might be just your way of procrastinating, and you might be, you can probably speed things up a little bit.
I would agree with that.
All right, so last idea, kind of just segueing from where we left off. How do you, we really don't have time to get into the nuts and bolts of how to train, but where to kind of start. Again, there are resources out there. There's internet stuff, there's videos, blah, blah, blah. But really how to figure out how to train for a show. Let's say you've actually picked one. It's probably going to have about 5 events. You actually know pretty much what they are. You know what the weights and the implements and the times and things like that are going to be. Where do you go from there? So best case scenario.
Again, finding a gym with the implements and somebody to coach you through them. Strongman is kind of not necessarily unique, but it is different in that you don't just walk up to a stone and go, oh hey, I totally know how to lift this. It's not a natural thing at all, and it's going to feel really, really awkward the first, 100 times that you do it. So having somebody there to show you and help you and coach you through that becomes very important, and really does help prepare you more and gives you a huge leg up on people who don't necessarily have that. If you do not have that person, then that would be where you turn to internet resources and things of that nature. And there are lots of groups that will offer feedback to you on Facebook and forums and things like that. So, take that as you will. But.
So yeah, let's talk about that best case. There's this weird kind of culture about strongman that's a little cavalier, and there's an attitude out there amongst a lot of athletes and a lot of spectators that form and things like that are kind of secondary to absolute strength. And if your first resource is maybe a training group that meets in a garage on Saturdays, it's hard to say whether you're walking into a group of guys that actually are very technically proficient and are really students of the game and who are really going to show you the ropes the right way, or if it's just a bunch of bros who like doing weird shit and feeling manly because they're all of their equipment looks scary. And you see it both ways. Where I started, the coaches that the coach, Chris Lawyer of the weight room that I learned from, he's a real student of the game, and he's probably forgotten more things about technique, form, and mechanics than almost anybody's ever going to know. And so when I was learning, the implements, I would say the opposite approach. I got the sort of physics nerd kind of everything is acting and this is how you do it perfect. And the truth is I acknowledge the importance of that because these implements are weird and hard, and you're trying to, in a lot of cases it's for a 1 rep max. You know, it's a very intense form of expression of like maximal force, maximal strength, and it's like if you don't do it right, it's dangerous. Like, I just thought that was a norm, but it turns out it's not. A lot of people are just like, yo, bro, it's heavy, man, do it. And cool, that works for some people. But if you're not, you know, somebody that thrives in that kind of environment, you might need to shop around a little bit. But the absolute best case scenario is you're in a gym that is like dedicated, at least in some way, to Strongman, has most of the implements, and has somebody there who's coaching that sport and can take the time to actually teach you how to use them. Second best scenario is finding like good resources on the internet, and I think there are a bunch. Cale Beck has some great videos. I've noticed recently, props to Alan Thrall from Untamed Strength. He makes some very good and very fun, like funny like videos on technique. And he's got some for cleaning and pressing the log and flipping tires. I believe the tire flip one has a song.
It's quite great.
So I like those a lot. Outside of that, like instructional how-tos, like it would be kind of hit or miss. Like, you know, there's lots of people out there. One thing that can be fun is like if you find athletes that actually demonstrate a really excellent technique, just watching their training videos. A lot of guys just put everything on YouTube. So watching what people actually do can teach you a lot about form and technique, but also like about training programs. I think we're going to wrap it up. It looks like people are getting here for class, and we're getting some background noise. So the final thing, how to train for your first show the dumb way.
So that would be, you don't have implements, you don't have anybody to show you. There are certainly ways to train for Strongman without implements. Again, Cale Beck has great sort of videos on how to do that. Even in like your commercial gym, like you can totally train for something approximating stones and golds or whatever. And you can definitely find lots of resources for that. Again, I would encourage you, if you have something within driving distance, that you go and touch the implements at least once, even if it's just for one Saturday weekend. Because that is not only going to help you sort of refine your technique, it's just a big confidence booster when you're walking in, especially if it's your first show. First show, there's a lot of unknown things and stuff to worry about, like what to pack, what to eat, and stuff like that. That can get a little overwhelming if you're an over-analytical person like I am.
There's going to be a lot of jitters no matter what.
Yeah.
The last thing you want to do is add the complication of not knowing at all what the fuck you were doing all day long.
Right.
You know,
it makes it a lot more fun.
It's definitely more fun to actually know what you were doing. Absolutely.
A big thing. And we'll post the link. I have a whole post about what to pack and what to eat, and we'll touch on that later too, but I'll throw it up on the Facebook page as well in case people are curious about that for like first competition stuff.
Well, shit. You probably have a couple of links. We could add my first show.
Yes.
What to pack for a show.
I've got lots of links that I will definitely throw up on there.
Gabby has a blog.
Oh yeah, I have a blog and things where I write on the internets for people, and people read it because I don't know why the fuck, but they do.
I think it's quite charming.
Oh, thank you, Jason. But
all right.
Yeah, so we will wrap it up so you can actually go coach people.
Yeah, we can do that.
I can go to work.
Yeah, sure.
That'll be good.
Okay. All right. Well, what do we say to wrap up?
I don't know. You pick.
We're still new at this.
So we're gonna work this out.
Yeah, all the bugs. It'll be super professional really soon.
Totally.
Oh yeah.
Great. Yeah.